Hey folks, Dr. Mike here for Renaissance Periodization. Simple tips to increase your deadlifts starting now. I think we have 7 of them. Yep. Tip number 1 is to standardize your technique. A lot of folks, deadlift isn't going up or they're not sure if they're getting stronger. They grip the bar different ways when they reach down. They grip it at different lengths. Their hips are in a different position. When their weights are light, they tend to stand up through full hip extension. When the weights get heavy, they tend to shoot the butt up. Non-standardized technique is a bad deal because your body is strongest when it's well practiced, and it can only be well practiced in a specific technique. So whatever technique you choose, same foot position, same knee position, same hand position, same chest position, replicate that over and over and over. Don't deviate from it. Find a technique that's comfy and that works well, and then practice it without changing stuff. If you go in sumo one day and conventional the next and wider grip one day and closer grip the next, your body's really confused and you won't get as good as possible at deadlifting versus if you just did one technique and kept it stable. So that's a big deal. Second, spend lots of time in the 3 to 6 repetition range. It's cool to pull deadlifts for doubles or singles. It's fun in a bodybuilding sense to do deadlifts for sets of 5 to 10, but basic strength is best trained in sets of 3 to 6 repetitions. And that's probably where you should be training a lot of your deadlift. Now that sucks. It's heavy. It's hard. Multiple sets. You're not really showing off, but it's heavy enough to be really brutal. It is what it is, but it works the best. So give it some thought. Next, deadlifting more often. Here's the problem with deadlifting. It is so systemically fatiguing, so axially fatiguing, so just fatiguing that if you deadlift heavy once a week, it takes kind of a whole week for you to be able to go heavier and then some again. If you deadlift heavy twice a week, sometimes even more often, the disruption is so insane in just one of those sessions that the fatigue overlaps and it grows really fast. And within a few weeks, you're super weak on the deadlift again. But you could say, well, how's that a problem? Just train deadlift once a week, but hold on. Once a week is not enough to practice the technical qualities of the deadlift, the actual movement pattern, because remember from point number 1, the movement pattern is huge in order to ingrain to become stronger. A lot of times, the only reason powerlifters are stronger than bodybuilders isn't because their muscles are bigger. Sometimes they're smaller. They just really grooved into that one single lift, which they practice all the fucking time. Bodybuilders do other lifts, so their specific strength for that lift is not really good. So you can be overall have a stronger legs and stronger core and stronger back than someone, but they deadlift more just because they practice the deadlift a lot. But if you can only deadlift heavy once a week, how the hell are we supposed to practice it more than that? And the answer is lighter sessions. Do sets of 3 to 6 reps with like 70% or 60% or even 50% of your 1 repetition max, at least one other time during the week. And if you deadlift twice, maybe 2 sessions are relatively light and 1 session is hard and heavy. That way, you get tons and tons of practice with the deadlift motion without coming in hitting a huge fatigue wall, because such small number of sets with a small number of reps with a weight that's very light allows you to practice your technique a ton, but doesn't impose a whole lot of fatigue on you, possibly not at all. That's a great thing, and I really, really highly recommend it. So worst case, you deadlift once a week with some whatever accessory you do, and another time a week, maybe with legs or something, you start or finish the workout with 3 or 4 sets of 3 to 6 reps, ultra light in the deadlift. That practice alone will make your harder days on the deadlift next week go better, and you'll be stronger and you'll feel technically more proficient. So give that some thought. Next, point number 4 is doing the right accessory work. A lot of the great accessory lifts for deadlifting target various parts of the deadlift musculature, which there are really 3 muscles that contribute a ton to the deadlift. It is the musculature of your hamstrings, that of your glutes, which is almost never a limiting factor because your glutes are really, really strong, and the musculature of the erector spinae complex, the spinal erectors. Those are the predominant muscles that are really, really involved and limiting factors in deadlifting. We'll talk later about another mystery muscle that you can work on, but here, the point is we want exercises that target those really well. And what are those exercises? Stiff-legged deadlift can target the hamstrings a ton. The glutes a ton, and the spinal erectors to some extent. Good mornings, same. Deficit deadlifts can require a lot of all of that, but specifically the glutes and the erector complex, because you have to move through a huge range of motion. And some of that is going to be actual active flexion and extension of the erector complex, which is really great, makes them really strong. You can use flexion rows, which are a type of row in which you round and then arch your entire back, your entire spinal cord. It's actually a dynamic way of training the spinal erectors, which is different because most deadlift variants are static. The spinal erectors are isometrically contracted. They don't move. And isometric training is fine for muscle, but it's not the best. Dynamic training is better. So flexion rows are great. And of course, other things like deadlift with bands and so on and so forth. Notice, I didn't really say a whole lot about regular barbell rows, because regular barbell rows are primarily designed to train the musculature that pulls your elbows behind you. And that's not a function in the deadlift. That's not what the deadlift does. There is absolutely some lat work involved in the deadlift, but not a ton. The lats are usually in the very shortened position, and they're usually in isometric contraction. And it's really quite rare that they are a super big limiting factor to the lift. With just your normal back training, which you should be doing anyway, and with all this stuff, especially with a properly done stiff-legged deadlift, which you pull into yourself, you should have plenty of that sort of work lined up. Number 5, treating your spinal erectors as a dynamic muscle to train is a really, really good idea, because spinal erectors are the single most determinative muscle of deadlift strength. When your back starts to go from relatively flat to round because your spinal erectors are insufficiently strong, your central drive, your nervous system's ability to tell all of your other muscles like your hamstrings and your glutes to turn on and pull declines rapidly because your body perceives an instability. It perceives a source of potential injury, and it just kind of says, whoa, easy, fellas. It's like trying to jump really high off of a sheet of ice. If your body perceives instability, it's not going to let you activate a ton of musculature. So it turns out that very many people have legs, hamstrings, maybe inner thighs, a bit of quad, and glutes strong enough to pull way bigger deadlift numbers than they are, but their backs aren't strong enough. That's why the deadlift is considered a back exercise in many cases, because the spinal erectors are such the limiting factor, and you should be training them. They're great to train with deficit pulls, for example, especially deficit pulls which require such a big deficit that you have to round your back to get them. Now, you got to play with load management here. You can't go ultra heavy, but sets of 5 to 10 with deficit pulls can be an unbelievable back builder that can translate to giving you a more muscular back that you can isometrically contract later on regular deadlifts. And of course, flexion rows are a great option on any kind of row in a machine where you go into a fully flexed position, and then at the top, you go into a fully extended position. In addition to that, staying super upright and super tight and super arched back with stiff-legged deadlifts and even heavy deadlifts for repetitions also grows the spinal erector. So you want those nasty cables in the middle of your back. If you build those muscles, your deadlift will go up. It's absolutely a thing. Now, if you've been deadlifting for a while and it's gotten stale on you, sometimes not deadlifting at all is the best thing to do, because lifts do get stale. The stimulus to fatigue ratio of the deadlift starts to fall, and it has already gone from our inclusion criteria of what is a good exercise. The only reason you're putting it in, or keeping it in rather, is because you're specializing on it. And we say there's sort of 2 reasons to do an exercise. 1, you want to focus on it, and 2, it's got a good stimulus to fatigue ratio. But when one of those drops off, yeah, we're still training the deadlift to say we're training for deadlift, to check box the specificity thing, but we're not actually getting very good training. We could be getting very bad training. Training that is so bad it is insufficient to exceed your body's current adapted level, and then you just don't get any better. Fuck that. Better than that, take the deadlift if it's feeling really stale and just throw it away. And do multiple months of deficit pulling, flexion rows, all sorts of other work, stiff-legged deadlifts, and get those lifts going up nice and high. Then a couple months later, when the deadlift is something like you picked up and played around with it and tried it in the gym, it's feeling real fresh, then come back to it and ease in, and you'll get mega gains because now it'll be novel. Its stimulus to fatigue ratio will be high again, and you'll be able to really, really convert. And the entire time that you stayed away from the deadlift, you were working on all of the muscles and movements that contribute to a big deadlift, but not the deadlift itself. So you've lost no time at all. You've gained a ton of ground, in fact. And lastly, grip can be a huge factor in the deadlift. It's actually been shown that if humans grab thinner bars, they can generate more pulling force than if they grab thicker bars. Check this out. Even regardless of if they're strapped into the device. If you feel like you can grip harder because the bar is thinner, your body will let you pull harder. And that same thing is multiplied by 10 if your grip is actually slipping, because in that particular study, there was no possible grip slip because they were tied right into the device. It still mattered how they felt about their grip. If your grip is actually slipping in the deadlift, I mean, holy shit. As soon as you pull a weight and your fingers start to go, your body's central drive to your quads, your hams, your glutes, your spinal erectors goes down. Because if you're unstable and losing something, your body won't let you generate so much force that it rips it out of your hands. It believes you when you say you want to hold on to this bar. It says, okay, we can hold on, but if we slow the weight down. But if you slow the weight down, you start missing lifts. Now, of course, straightforwardly, if you can pull 500 with straps, but only 450 without straps in a competition, and I'm assuming many of you are competitive powerlifters watching this, you can't use straps. If you increase your grip, two amazing things happen. One is straightforwardly, if grip was actually the limiting factor for you, automatically now it's less and you can just deadlift way more. Same glutes, same hams, same spinal erector complex, bigger grips equals bigger deadlift if grip was a limiting factor. Even if it wasn't a limiting factor, and even if it was, just being able to grip harder, more completely and feel more stable will automatically let you produce more power with the rest of your body, produce more force with the rest of your body, and actually get bigger lifts. That's a big deal. So abso-friggin-lutely get a bigger grip. And the best way to do that is probably working with the captains of Crush Grippers. So go on ironmind.com, no affiliation, just a huge fan. Get you some trainer captains of Crush Grippers. And they have grippers all the way up the chain from like you can't barely grab a pencil all the way to you can crush people's hands when you shake their hands. And they have all the grippers so you can periodize, do sets of 5 to 10 with a gripper. All of a sudden, first of all, your forearms are going to get big. And also you're just going to be way, way, way more able to, well, do your best at gripping and thus have a bigger deadlift. Simple enough? Sweet. Folks, we will see you next week for the advanced periodization version of if you can actually spot some distinct problems in your deadlift. We'll teach you an advanced periodization for how to fix them so you can finally pull big. And we'll really just have a reason to be around, because if you can't deadlift heavy, I think as John Paul Sigmarsson once said, what is exactly that you're doing on this earth? See you next time.